So, jumping right into things, I want to stick with the concept of process, man. The one word I've heard you bring up time and time again every time we've talked is patience. Before we get into the winterization, closed loop process, any of that, I like to start with the ingredients of what make these things successful, and I think part of that is patience,
Oh
right?
yeah, definitely. Patience is virtue, and in this business, if you don't have patience, you ain't gonna make it real far. Honestly, God, truth, a lot of people rush themselves and to getting their finished product and end up with the undesirable traits or the unwanted values of concentrates. And honest God, truth, it takes a longer purge and lower pressures and lower temps to get the most desirable traits of your concentrate. If you rush anything that's rushed is not going to be perfect, and everybody knows that. That's why I always like to start with the winterization process, and from there, obviously, many of you people out there are familiar with the winterization. It's been around for a long time now, and then from there, I like to go through my closed loops. Closed loops, like I had discussed earlier, are highly preferred over the open loops for many desirable reasons. From there, I like to go through my closed loop into my long purge process. A minimum on your when you do a long purge process, you should be purging your products no less than 3 to 7 days. If you are, you're going to have a lot of undesirable traits no matter what you say, and it's going to be an unhealthy product. Also, some of the reasons for a lot of people don't know for the winterization is to get rid of the unwanted desirables like fat lipids, chlorophyll, and things like that.
And again, there are so many different techniques that people like to adopt or don't like to adopt, and again, without trying to get into too many specifics, because process is so important to everybody. I mean, is there a reason or maybe something that happened in life where you're like this? For me, the winterization is the way to go for these reasons.
Well, the main reasons for the winterization process is it makes it a lot easier to extract the fat lipids, obviously, and not only that, but you get a very more clear ending product. It makes the process a lot quicker instead of having to have the waiting period of getting under the dried flowers. When obviously many people know that about 92% of your cannabinoids are lost during the curing process, which is a big factor when it comes to wax, which is why I'm working on moving towards the solventless waxes, because you're able to use your winterization process and use fresh plants to get all the terpenes possible. And not only that, but everyone knows when you have fresh flowers and fresh plants, the reek and the smell and the quality of it is much better than the finished product and the dried cannabis. And that's the whole reason why the winterization process is so important, is to get all those attractions that you usually lose by the end of your curing process.
And when people talk about efficiency, I feel like efficiency can be understated as a trait. The more efficient you are as a grower or as a baker or as an artist or however you want to refer to yourself, the more product you can churn out, which means more money. There's a reason they invented the assembly line. When you talk about the efficiency of winterization, what does that mean for the uninitiated? How much more efficient is the process?
Well, not there are some people who want to get quality or quantity over quality, but I highly recommend going for the quality over quantity any day. You're obviously not going to get as high end of a pool at the end of your process, and you're going to end up losing somewhat a big chunk of what you normally pull off. But the traits and the quality of your finished product are outstanding, and they're 10 times better, and they're worth the more money, the more cost. But not only that, but you're helping your patients smoke something that's better for them, and you're bringing something better to the public, and you're not releasing trash, something that's bad for the consumers. Because the whole reason most people got into it, which they forget down the line, is for, as we're going to talk about in the next segment, the health aspects of it. And it really does matter. It's a big deal to me, and it should be to everybody. And a lot of people kind of just lose it and start focusing on the values of the product instead of in what they can make, rather than helping the consumer themselves.
And as you're going through this entire setup and you get everything, I guess you could say, constructed or exactly how you want it, what have you found have been the constants, no matter, because everybody's process evolves. If your process hasn't evolved,
then you're behind.
I have some serious questions for you. What have been, though, and again, without getting into tricks of the trade, but what have been some constants for you? Some basic constants that any fool could master, that from A to
are you talking about are you talking about like what I had problems with?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, you know what, problems. Maybe the better way to phrase that is, what was a problem that growers, even advanced growers, can run into, or advanced extract artists can run into later on in the process down their career, that you figured out maybe early on that have stuck with you? Not a trick of the trade, but just basic things that people tend to get hung up on.
I think one of the biggest issues that people get hung up on, and I mean, I see it all the time, they know what they're doing, they make beautiful concentrates, but your beginning product really does matter. And if you're starting, I see some people who end up doing a whole operation just to turn into concentrates, and then their concentrate is very undesirable, comes out sappy, comes out not what they're looking for, not a solid, stable consistency. And the reason being is for not only it's the strain, the genetics, the CBD, the CBN. I mean, it all comes into play. When it comes to concentrates, you have, if you don't know what you're doing, or if you don't know what strains to use, you will run into many altercations. I mean, I remember I'd say the first year when I first started this, I thought I knew what I was doing, which I learned now I did not. I mean, there was a lot of times, I was like, my process is flawless. Why is my product coming out like this? Well, what you start with is your foundation, and that highly matters. And as a lot of growers and concentrate makers run into this problem all the time, where they think, because of the process is flawless, they're just going to grow strain, or have someone grow strain for them to turn to concentrate for the consumers, and end up a big waste of time. And not only that, but a big downfall in the end, and undesirable concentrates which end up being in the trash.
And after you've gone through this process, after you've created everything, after you have your finished product, and that includes flour, because, I mean, like you said, the only way for a man to control the only way for a man to ensure that he's starting with a great product is to do it himself, because if you're relying on somebody else, there are no guarantees. But if you know, like you said, if you know what you're doing, you can create magic. How difficult has it been? Because the cannabis industry is it's growing, and it's
every
booming.
day it's booming.
How difficult has it been for you to sort of not advance your process, but sort of advance your product through the process to the mass media? Because I imagine that's where things come in. When you have a process that's tried and true and tested and produces great yield after great yield after great yield, I'm sure there's a point where you want to get that out to as many people as possible, and you've run into walls. What have they been?
I ran into many walls when it comes to that. Not only the problem of being able to having to drive from place to place and meeting these new people, but also to keep up with the demand. Obviously, like you said, the industry is booming. The demand is huge, a lot bigger than before. There was a higher supply than demand. Now that it's the opposite, there's a much bigger demand than there is supply. So that was a big problem, being able to keep up. The process I have is obviously flawless, like many people's is. But the fact of able to mass produce it and things like that comes into play. Definitely, if it wasn't for some of my boys from Emotech and helping me out with the closed-loop systems, it'd been really hard to keep up with the mass product. But because of them, I haven't ran into any walls with that. But a big wall that everybody runs into is, not in producing, but finding the people to carry the product. And I mean, you see people left and right always going from place to place, pretty much running around like a chicken with his head cut off, and wasting usually days, talking to all the other people they don't want to do business with. And as we're talking about, that's one thing I'm really excited to see about this product that has come out, and with us doing this, what we're doing, it's going to sum things up and make things a lot easier on both ends, not just on my end, but everyone's in the whole circle.
Yeah, and you know, for talking about Canna.Biz, and it's just a way for you. And I know you were saying that you were talking, you know, even to just people within the industry about how this would simplify your lives. You know, can you share just a little bit of that? And then I'd like to get into the health aspect of this.
Well, it'll definitely, one thing I definitely want to, couldn't stress enough about is it's going to pretty much take out all the time on the road. It takes all the crap out of the business. You don't have to go and deal with people that you don't want to deal with. You don't have to go and show your product to someone who you end up not caring for or doing business with. You can actually know, you actually, yeah, exactly. And you actually get to see the people before you meet them and see what they're about and see how professional they handle themselves. And not only that, but also it's got their locations where they'll be, and if they're interested in your product, they'll let you know, and vice versa. If you're wanting to talk to them, you could mention to them, hey, this and this and this, and sum things up, so that way when you get there, you ain't sitting there and talking, and then end up nowhere. Many people run into that all the time. You have sometimes people who haven't seen your product because a lot of people don't believe in having an Instagram or Facebook or some kind of one of them anti-social networks, so that way people can see your product. So it's and they don't believe in sending pictures. So it's very difficult for the consumer to know if they want it. This way, it actually allows them to know briefly about yourself. It allows them to see how consistent you are, and not only consistent, but how you handle yourself and how your wax is represented and how stable it is and how consistent you are overall. Yeah. And it pretty much takes, like I said, it takes all the crap out of it. It takes the headache out of it pretty much. And that's what I really love about this.